This is a lecture from Open Tuition. For the free lecture notes that go with this podcast, please visit opentuition.com. The next one, my pages have all come out. Was that page 41? Yeah? The next one, this is good. We've been talking about betas. I hope easy enough. Some of that you've done before, little formula new. But now let's talk about alphas. And this, I think, is beautiful. A lot of people think, oh shit, I just got the hang of betas and now it gets worse. Alphas are absolutely wonderful. All it is this. I said earlier, even though we certainly assume in exams and even in real life, that betas work, I think you'd accept that nothing's perfect in real life, and even if capital asset is working, it'll be a miracle if it works precisely day by day, I said earlier, we have those little examples. If the beta's this, what will be the return, the return will be 22.3. Well, I don't think you'd be too surprised if some days it was a bit more, some days a bit less, You'd expect it would be about that, yeah? Well, all alpha is doing is measuring how close it is. Let me show you. It's so easy, it's untrue. Example 9. D has a beta of 0.6. It's giving a return of 8. Forget that for the moment. Its beta is 0.6. The market return is 10. The risk-free is 4. Can you all write down for me, according to capital asset pricing model, what return should D be giving? If capital asset pricing model works, we know it's beta, we know the market, we know risk-free. What return should D be giving? Do we all agree that according to capital asset pricing model, if today the market gives 10, risk-free is 4, if we have a beta of 0.6, it should be giving 7.6%. But as I said, even though capital asset, it does appear to work in real life, you're not going to be too upset if some days it gives a bit more than it should, some days a bit less. And it turns out here that D, although it's beta is 0.6, it's actually giving a return of 8%. Well, all the alpha is, all it is so easy. The alpha value is the difference between them. It's the actual return minus the theoretical, the capital asset pricing model return. So today it's giving 8. It should be giving 7.6. Its alpha is 0.4. Now, yet again, that's not on the formula sheet. Sorry. This has been very common. Only ever in section B. All right? I'll tell you where its relevance is in real life in a moment. But it's only been in section B. And I think it only ever would be. But on several occasions, they've given you a list of perhaps 6 or 7 shares, given you the betas, told you what returns they're giving, and asked you for the alphas. Well, again, I always think it's silly to do the same thing 6 or 7 times, but even so, there's not much involved there. All right? And I hope clearly the alpha could be positive or negative. Some days it gives a bit more, some days it gives a bit less. But are we clear what it is? All right, arithmetically, that can't be harder. You all right there? You ready? Mm-hmm. Yeah? Hello? Arithmetically, it can't be harder. Now say, you said you do it 6, 7 times. On one question, keep repeating. But for the written, the 2 things he's asked, one I hope is very obvious. One needs a tiny bit more thought. The first thing he's asked, which I think was obvious, was to check people understood what they were doing. You know, anybody can learn a formula. On average, what would you expect the alpha to be? On average. You know, if I looked at this over a year, day by day, some days more, whatever, what would you expect the average alpha to be over a period? 0. Surely. If capital asset works, if it worked exactly, you'd be getting 7.6, fine. We've said we're not surprised the market's not perfect. You're not surprised if some days it actually gives a bit more, but surely other days a bit less. Are you with me? Surely, if you looked over a period, if capital asset works, you'd expect the average alpha to be 0. Would that make sense, everybody? Natalia? Now, he has checked on that, and that was just to check you understood what we were doing. I think you'd agree, I hope you'd agree, I'm not going to write on the screen, if I looked over a whole year, if alpha was always, for example, positive, always positive, it would suggest to me that either capital asset wasn't working, or more likely, it would suggest to me that we've got the wrong beta. You agree? That's one thing he's asked. The other thing, though, is the actual practical use, to be honest, because alphas are published as well. I keep talking about returns, and we always do this on returns, percentage returns. Yeah? But you know, if you're buying a share, the return really is, if you like, the dividends you're getting based on the market value you're paying. You understand me? In simplest terms, if you're paying $1 and you're getting 10 cents dividend, there's your 10% return. Well, because the market's not perfect, although theoretically that share would give you 7.6%, you've all accepted some days it might give a bit more, other days it might be giving a bit less. All right? We'll use this example. Today it happens to be giving a bit more than it should do. You know what I mean? Its alpha's positive. The question he has asked, which requires a few seconds more thought, if alpha is positive, does it suggest the share is over or undervalued? What I mean is, the share price, does it suggest the share price is higher than it should be or lower than it should be? You're understanding my question? Capital S doesn't work in perfect. In a perfect world, alpha would be 0. The share price would be what it should be, Here, because we're not working perfectly, if it's got a positive alpha, does that suggest the share price is a bit higher than it really should be, or a bit lower?
Lower.
Maybe. Let these two think and we'll have a vote.
Higher.
Higher. You've got the deciding vote, Natalia. Oh, it's one of the two. Good. It is lower. And you see what I mean? Well, I think all of you, it needs a few minutes thought. And you got it pretty quickly. But I think you'd agree in the middle of an exam, your brain often works the wrong way. Using the simplest possible illustration, I said, if you've got a share where the market value is 100, if the dividend is 10 cents, then the return is 10%. You agree? And suppose that's perfect capital asset. Suppose the beta says it should be 10%. If the dividend's 10, the market value will be $1. Okay? Well, here, if things aren't working precisely, if the return was actually a little bit higher, so a positive alpha, assuming it's giving a 10% dividend, surely, for 10 cents to be an 11% return, the share price would have to be a bit lower. I'm not going to work out an exact figure. Let's say 90 something. You understand me? So 10 cents on 90. I think you've understood me. So the return's too high. It's higher than it should be. But it does mean the market value is lower than it should be. All right? We say it's undervalued. Now, I hope I've made that clear. Think about that, because there is an importance. I'm going to mention the practical importance in a second, which is why he asks it. But I think you saw my point, Reda. The thing is, in the middle of an exam, it'd be a shame to waste 5 minutes debating, and then, of course, end up guessing the wrong one. Where, if you have understood me, if you're not in an exam and you're not panicking, you're thinking, it's not too bad, yeah? Now, the relevance is this. The reason people talk about alphas in practice. It's funny, actually. I was watching CNN last week and all the alphas are negative or something. I thought, I bet nobody knows what he's talking about. It sounded impressive. Now, the point is this, that we assume, capital as it works, the market is not perfect. If you happen to see this share today and you realised it had got a positive alpha, you know its share price is lower than it should be. Yeah? Well, although today it's a bit too low, we assume, capital as it works, and the share price will in fact go up. The market value, the return will sort of go to 10% like it should be. And so now's the time to buy the share. The share is cheap. Buy it now while it's 90, because it's going to go up. You see my point? If, on the other hand, you realised, you've got a share and it's got a negative alpha, it means because of imperfections in the market, the share price is too high at the moment. And we say, well, it's going to fall at some stage. Well, let's sell now, while it's high. Is the point I'm making? So that's why it's relevant. And you do hear commentators say, that, because something's happened in New York, all the share prices are lower than they should be. Or, we've got positive alphas. Well, when there's positive alpha, that's when you should be buying. When there's negative alphas, that's when you should be selling. All right? Whereas in a perfect world, of course, it's always giving what the share price is always what it should be. You can't sort of gain and lose in the same way. Okay? So it helps you remember, I won't write an essay here, but positive alpha, it means the share price is too low or where it's undervalued. Yeah? You, Katerina? Which is what we've just seen. And if there's any chat surrounding it, the relevance is this is the time to buy. While it's undervalued. Sensible? He's not actually asked the last bit, but that would be the real relevance. But he's certainly asked you. Calculate some alphas. Does it appear to be under or overvalued? Well, and obviously the opposite if it's a negative alpha. I'm not going to write that down.